Hey gang, welcome to this episode of Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. I want to take a second here and thank everyone for your support. I just passed 5,000 subscribers, and that blows my mind that in just over a year I was able to impress that many people to like this channel, and basically do it on my own without doing a lot of collaborations, which I am always open to, by the way. I know 5,000 isn't as much as the guys who have been doing this for as long as they have, but I like to think I offer something they don't, and vice versa. So thanks again. Looking forward to the next 5,000. As always, if you've got a true scary story you want to share, send it to unclejoshtruescarystories@gmail.com. Now, let's get it on. When the burglar made himself at home. When I was about 4, we were broken into twice. The first time, my grandfather and Mum had been grocery shopping. We arrived home and unlocked the front door, and one of the bedroom doors up the passageway slammed shut from the change in air pressure. My grandfather must have sensed something was up and ran up the passageway to the bathroom. The window was open and the curtains were swinging in the breeze, but there was nobody to be found. They figured he mustn't have been in there long before they arrived home, as nothing in the house was taken or touched. The second time was 3 months later. My mum woke up to someone sitting on her bed with a knife in his hand at 3 a.m. Mum says she froze. Couldn't talk, couldn't move. Completely petrified. She said he was mumbling, but she couldn't make out what he was saying. Then the next door neighbor's dog barked, and he just stood up and walked out. She heard the back door sliding open, and a minute or so later the line of light shining through the curtains from the streetlight blanked out. She grabbed the phone and called my grandfather, and all she said was, "There's someone in the house." He lived about 5 minutes away with her 3 younger teenage brothers, and in less than 5 minutes they pulled in the driveway and scattered to surround the house, all barefoot, wearing only their underwear. Every single door was unlocked, and the back door was open, but there was nobody to be seen. Mum was a mess. There were big muddy footprints in the laundry under the little window she left open for the cat. It took a few days for all the weird things that this creep had done to be discovered. He had shredded a black negligee that was in the laundry basket, fed the cat and poured her a bowl of milk, poured a whiskey out of the decanter in the living room and added ice and Coke to it. Somehow he had injected solder into the eggs in the fridge, ate the leftover roast meat out of the fridge, cut up some catalogs that were sitting on the bench and took a photo of the stovetop and another one of me sleeping on my mum's camera and left it sitting next door to my bed. He tipped salt into Mum's shoes, and the knife was out of my mum's block in the kitchen, and they never found it. Just really weird shit. The cops came, got plenty of fingerprints, but whoever it was didn't have a record. The consensus eventually was that it was an acquaintance of one of her brothers. It was a bit of a Chinese whisper's conclusion, though. He'd said X and Y to person A, who told person B, etc., and it got back to Mum's brother. He was eventually locked up on some sort of psychiatric hold for something unrelated, and was never charged with the break-in. This messed my mum up for a lot of years. My Home Invasion Story by Thomas X. When I was 16 or 17, I was home while someone attempted to break in. The experience ended well for me, and not so much for the perp, but I figured it would be interesting to discuss since enough years have passed and I can look back on the situation critically. Before I get into the meat of this story, I would like to preemptively point out that I had little to no tactical training back when it happened, and frankly didn't really think about home security very much. Prior to breaking down my reaction to the threat, let's discuss the parameters. My home at the time was my grandmother's home here in the UK, which is basically a 2-bedroom flat that consists of a top floor of a house. Downstairs was one flat, upstairs was another. To get to me, you have to open a creaky gate, break down my front door, and climb a long set of stairs. The gate isn't locked, and it faces onto a main street, and the front door is plain wood with a very basic Yale lock, and not the most secure, and a privacy chain too. There's no secondary door, nothing else to get through once you get through the front door. Now, on to the story. It's around 4 in the afternoon. I'm typing away at my desk much like I am now, and I hear scratching by the door. I ignore it for a minute, assuming it's the postman. In hindsight, I should have remembered the postman already came that morning. But the scratching became more aggressive, and I decided to take a peek from the top of the stairs. I can see through the privacy glass on the top of the door, and it's this huge bloke. We're talking 6'3" plus and all muscle. At this point, I figure out he was attempting to lockpick his way in, and I sort of froze. The strange thing is, I didn't panic or run, but rather just stood there observing him. I'm so unprepared for this event that my mind doesn't really know how to react, so I sort of just stand there, staring. After 10 seconds of standing still and doing nothing, I feel a wave of panic wash over me and retreat to my bedroom. I breathe in and out a few times and look around for a weapon. Now, some of you hearing this are probably thinking, "Bro, why didn't you call the cops yet?" Well, I don't know. Honestly, the thought didn't even cross my mind. So here I am in my bedroom, frantically trying to come up with a plan. I decide to confront this person because I'm 17 and invincible, or so 17-year-olds tend to think. I, for one, did. But first, I wanted to be ready. This is the UK, so firearms and ranged weapons are not an option. And even in my quasi-panic state, I realized that if this invader made his way into the house, it wouldn't end well for me. The idea of standing on top of the stairs with a bowie staring down this moron menacingly just didn't feel viable. So in my head, the only option I had was to dissuade him from entering the property. Bear in mind that as I'm thinking about this guy is still picking away at my door. You can imagine my mental state. Oddly enough, even though I have been a knife nut since I was a kid, I didn't grab a knife. Instead, the first thing I grabbed instinctively was my tomahawk. I think to this day I would still grab a hawk for home defense if all I had were edged tools. If I got to choose either the SOG F06PN Fast Hawk or the CRKT Chogan T-Hawk. Can't decide which. Anyway, I grab the hawk, slip it in my belt loop, put on a pair of Doc Martens and stomp my way out of my bedroom. Once I reach the top of the stairs, I still see the top of this bloke's head through the privacy glass and decide to head over to the living room to get a better look at him from the front windows. Big bloke. Meathead. Looks like an asshole. Alone. Right, Meathead is alone. I go back to the top of the stairs and shout out, "Oi! The fuck you think you're doing, mate?" Yes, how very Brit of me. The Meathead obviously heard me, though instead of running away like I expected, he instead, I shit you not, tried to ram the door down. Think about this. House is facing a main road. He has been picking away at the lock for a solid 3 minutes by now, and he hears a guy confront him from behind the door. So he tries to ram it down? Most important lesson I learned that day is that criminals are generally complete idiots. Back to the story. Meathead is really going at the door, slamming his shoulder in, and I can see the frame flexing. So I stomp down the stairs and brace the door. Here's where it gets all very interesting for me and quite anticlimactic for you. At some point, as I'm bracing the door and feel this parasite slam his shoulder into it, something inside me just snapped. I felt a sense of fury wash over me to the point that I did something so incredibly stupid that I am surprised I'm still here typing this today. I swung the door wide open. Yep. I was so fucking pissed that I thought, this guy is going to get a tomahawk to the face, and what did this genius criminal mastermind do when he saw me? Took one look at me and ran away down the street. That's the end of the story, folks. 3 to 6 months later, I don't recall precisely, the Crown Prosecution Service sent me a letter saying the idiot had been prosecuted. I called 20 minutes after the incident ended, and needed some time to calm down. Turns out he robbed quite a few places in the area, but they of course eventually caught him, and he went straight to the slammer. Looking back, things that surprised me about the situation and the way I reacted. As I mentioned, I'm a giant knife nerd, and have been for decades, and yet when push came to shove, I grabbed and still would grab a hawk. Like I said, this mindset hasn't changed. At no point did calling the police or anyone else for that matter cross my mind. To this day, I'm still more of a do-it-yourself kind of guy, but honestly, that was pretty dumb of me. The amount of rage I felt when I saw someone try to break into my home can't be quantified. The idiot criminal outweighed me by 3 of me easily, and I just didn't care. I just saw red and went for it with zero tactical foresight. The medieval ages made sense to me for the first time in my life. A criminal would try to pick a lock in broad daylight, and when that failed, ram it down. Man, brazen is an understatement. In hindsight, I should have called the police first. shouted out that I knew what he was doing and that the police were on their way, and then braced the door. I would have been fine with little to no risk. We can anticipate how we will react to stressful events, and I'd like to think that I learned from this experience, and I would be more cautious if this happened again. But I know myself well enough that if someone was trying to break into my home, my gut reaction wouldn't be to hide out and wait for backup. When it comes to my family and my home, frankly, if you are breaking in, expect war. They're here for the money. I live in a joint family system. My house is at the top and has just finalized construction, and this is the night we moved in. I was at the ground floor with my sister and 3 cousins and their parents. We were all laughing and having fun watching TV when a masked guy with a gun walked in. Now, I'm scared shitless because this is Pakistan, and I'm a closet atheist, so I think he's coming for me. But instead, he beats up my uncle and starts asking them for money and jewelry. They go out of the room to look while this other guy watches us. Everyone is dead quiet. We're all kids in here. Aside from that one guy, there was another guy laughing and making jokes. He's nice. The others, not so much. One comes in and says that they are from Afghanistan, and that Pakistan has helped the US destroy their country, so he's going to rob Pakistan. When we said that we obviously aren't from the government, he says the army did it. I froze. My dad, who's at the top floor, is in the army. He has been deployed at the Afghan border once, and no one's children are on the same floor as the parents, and nobody knows what's going on. I think our floor is the only one, and when they take everyone's phones, I thank God my Nexus is in my room. My uncle comes back with the mean thief. They didn't find enough. Apparently someone told them that we had gold bricks hidden somewhere. And this is when I started to calm down. They were here for the money, and not me. He then tells the nice thief to shoot me to get them to talk. We managed to talk him out of it, though they did take my eldest cousin and told his parents if they didn't cough up more, they were never going to see him again. After a bit more beating and searching, they decided to leave. My dad came down after they left to check on everyone, and he was hurt pretty bad. And whoopee, my Nexus was gone. Thankfully, they didn't touch my PS4 or PS3. Everyone was safe, though they were about to take a hostage. Also, one of my cousins was apparently crying and begging the gunman not to kill him to the point where the thief had to reassure him that they wouldn't. So, yeah. Later, the police told us one of them was killed in a showdown at another house when one of the neighbors called the police. Intruder by Whitey Whackers. This took place sometime after midnight on June 2nd, 2014. My girlfriend and I were asleep at her apartment. We had gone to bed around 11 p.m. that night after our usual Sunday evening routine of Chipotle and Game of Thrones and Veep. Her apartment is next to the complex's parking garage, so her bedroom is lit up pretty good at night. I use a sleep mask at night because the light really bugs me. I'm a heavy sleeper and typically sleep through the night, and I'm out pretty quickly once my mask is on and my head hits the pillow. My girlfriend, on the other hand, always takes a couple of hours to fall asleep and will wake up a handful of times throughout the night. Her apartment is decently sized. It's about 630 square feet, which is plenty of room for the both of us, but it doesn't leave a lot of room for anyone else. It's on the ground floor, and as you enter, you step into the living room. To your right is the kitchen and breakfast area, which share an open floor plan with the living room. In the breakfast area is a coat closet, and on the opposite end of the apartment, at the far end of the kitchen, is a walk-in closet containing a washer and dryer. There's a set of French doors in the living room which open to a small patio. The bedroom and bathroom are separated from the living areas by a single wall, and each of these rooms has a door leading to the living areas. And her bedroom is a walk-in closet, and the bathroom is a single vanity with a shower bath. Again, we're in bed, and it's most likely after midnight when I wake up. I'm on the left side of the bed and I'm facing the window, so the bedroom door is at my feet and behind me. The closet is at my feet, and on the wall I'm facing. And the reason I wake up is because my girlfriend is whispering in my ear. I realize I've been hearing it in my sleep for a while, but it isn't exactly registering until now. When it finally clicks, though, I'm hit with an incredible focus. I've never ever heard her sound this scared. Granted, we'd only been dating about 10 months at the time, But this is a side of her I'd never even come close to experiencing. I was instantly wide awake. She was pleading with me to wake up, whispering almost silently with her face buried against my neck. Her voice is soft but strong, yet still on the verge of cracking. "Please hear me. Please wake up." I shift firmly, pressing my left arm against her to let her know I'm awake. "There's someone in the living room. Do you hear that?" I very lightly shush her. Although I'd heard the noise before I even signaled my consciousness to her, I'm not sure what it is. The rush of adrenaline that came from first hearing her voice has me wide awake, but it's nothing compared to the overwhelming dread that fills me now. Coming from somewhere beyond the bedroom door is a low, soft sobbing. It's not constant. There are pauses and quiet breaths. There are slight squeaks as they try to control themselves. And I realize whoever is making these noises is very much aware of the circumstances we are all in. My feeling of dread is nearly incapacitating. I feel like my life is being taken away, and what's coming next will be without hope or purpose. I stay completely still, and my girlfriend begins to whisper again. "Honey, what is that?" I lightly shush her again and move to take my sleeping mask off. As soon as I move my hand, I hear movement in the living room. I freeze, and my girlfriend lets out a small gasp. I realize at this moment how hard her heart has been beating against me because for an instant it stopped. She squeezes closer to me. I'm determined to take my mask off, but the next noise I hear nearly causes me to faint from fear. A quick, soft shuffling on the carpet of the bedroom. Footsteps. They seem to have stopped right at the door. She and I were both completely still, maybe not even breathing. I now begin telling myself it's a dream, and there's no way this is real, because at this point I'm too terrified to move a muscle to help. My eyes are squeezed tight, even with the mask still on. The next noises I hear are the same shuffling steps immediately in front of me. There's a brief pause, and I'm aware of nothing but the sensation there is something passing over my body, coming inches away from me but not touching me. Then I felt the bed move. Whoever was in front of me put their weight onto the mattress. They haven't sat down, but it felt as if they had both hands on the bed. I knew they were leaning over me. The pressure on the mattress released, but I heard and felt nothing else. The silence was incredible, and the next thing I heard was the shuffling steps on the far end of the room near the doorway. Another brief silence, and the sobbing in the room started again, as quiet as before. I finally took my mask off, able to move again, and I heard a voice from the other room. "I'm sorry." It's low and clear and strained, and the sobbing continued. I sat up just enough so that in the relative dark of the bedroom, I looked as if I was still lying down, and I cocked my head and looked to the pitch-black doorway. I saw no movement. After several minutes, I quietly repositioned myself so that I was on my back with my head propped up on my pillows. I put my mask on and situated it so I could still see under it if I looked down. My girlfriend was shaking, and I whispered her to close her eyes. I hadn't heard anything for at least 5 minutes now. I stayed up all night watching the door in this position. I saw no movement and heard nothing. When the sun finally began to rise, I noticed its reflection off the microwave in the kitchen was getting more and more intense. There's no way the sun can come through this strong with the French door blinds being closed, which we do every night. So I finally decided to get up. As slowly and as evenly as I could slide out of bed, I did. I was focused on the doorway as I made my way around the foot of the bed, ready in case someone came bursting through and made a beeline for my now sleeping girlfriend. I positioned myself against the wall at the right side of the bedroom door, and see there was no one in the breakfast area. I backed away from the wall and made my way across the bedroom, looking out the doorway, and from a distance I was able to see there was no one in the living room. I stepped out of the bedroom, ready for whatever would come next, and realized it was completely empty. The French doors were open and slightly cracked, with sunlight pouring through, and that's why the reflection was so bright on the microwave. From where I stood, I could see the washer and dryer closet was open and empty. I realized there were only 2 other places someone could hide now: the coat closet and the bathroom. I stepped over to the French doors and closed them, locking the top deadbolt. I focused on the coat closet as I turned around and I made my way towards the kitchen. I took a butcher knife off of the counter next to the knife block, and as I made my way to the door, I realized I shouldn't be putting myself at risk with my girlfriend still asleep. I quickly walked back to the bedroom and woke her up. Fortunately, she was alert immediately. I whispered to her that I had to check the closet and bathroom, and before she could say anything, I stepped towards the bathroom. As I looked through the partially open door, I could see the shower reflected in the mirror. The curtain was open and the bathroom was empty. I could see through the gap in the door frame that there was no one behind the door. That left the coat closet. I approached the closet and formulated a plan. I was going to stand to the right of the knob so when I opened the door I could stand behind it for protection. And this way no one could get a shot straight at me if they were in there. I grabbed the knob, turned it, and stepped with the door as I opened it. No one came out. I hopped backward from my hiding spot and scooched around the edge of the door to see that the closet was empty. I returned to the bedroom and told my girlfriend, and she got up and we moved to the living room. We stood there in silence for a few minutes, just with our arms around each other, and she noticed a note on the ground. It was written on a piece of paper from a notepad we kept on the coffee table, and it was just one line. It said, "I don't hurt you." My girlfriend broke down in tears at this point, and it took everything I had not to cry as well. We ended up checking under the bed and in the bedroom closet, but found nothing. No sign anyone else was still there, or had ever been there. Nothing but the note and the open patio doors. We called the police, and after talking to us, they came to the conclusion that someone must have gotten into the apartment while we were out earlier in the day, and then left that night. They dusted for prints and everything, but came away with nothing but our own. The maintenance staff was also questioned, seeing as how they had access to keys to the apartment, but nothing came of that. Thankfully, the police took it pretty seriously, unlike some stories I've heard. Also, it took a while, but I realized the reason I grabbed the butcher knife off the counter instead of out of the block that morning was because someone else forgot to put it back. My girlfriend and I hadn't used that knife in days. Cop didn't do anything about it. When I was 17, I had a boyfriend who was in the Army. We didn't live on base, but in a tiny neighboring town nearby. He had some beef with a skinhead gang who had some members that were also in the Army. One night while we were sleeping, they knocked on our door. It was about 2 a.m. and we had no peephole or window near the door, so I opened it with the chain on. As soon as I did, 5 guys rushed the door and broke the chain. They all had baseball bats. The lights in the living room only stayed on for about 10 seconds because they began smashing my lamps and the overhead light on the fan, and then the kitchen and bedroom lights with their bats. I've never almost pissed my pants until then. I was so scared. My legs turned to rubber. Strangely, after they broke the chain, but before they smashed the lights, my vision got really dark. Like the lights were dimming down. This was the first time it ever happened, but to this day, if something startles me, my vision goes almost black before snapping back to normal. So these guys grab my boyfriend and are holding him down on the couch. 2 guys holding him down while the others take swings at his torso with the bats. I have no clue what to do, so I try to tackle them by taking a running jump. It's not really effective. I'm 17 and short, and these guys are like 25 and huge. My feet are bloody and cut up from running through broken glass, and I'm only wearing a t-shirt and undies. We only had one phone in that house, and it was in the bedroom, and I somehow felt like these guys weren't going to let me get at it. I ran out of the house, no shoes, bloody feet, glass digging in deeper every step, and I looked for the town's only cop. This was Nolanville, Texas, population 2,000. I ended up at the post office a few blocks over. There was a payphone, so I tried calling 911. It rang, but I was immediately put on hold. While I was waiting, the cop found me. He handcuffed me and put me in the cruiser because I didn't have any pants on. I tried to explain that my house had been broken into and my boyfriend was being assaulted, but the cop insisted on running my social security number to make sure everything, quote, added up. While I was in the back of the police car, I saw the 5 guys drive past us in a pickup truck. After everything checked out okay with my record, The cop drove me home, blowing off my break-in story. My door was wide open, with only the porch light lit. My boyfriend was still on the couch, curled up in a ball. He declined to go to the hospital, and we later found out he had 2 broken ribs. The cop called a backup unit from another neighboring town and then urged us to name the attackers, but my boyfriend wouldn't. We've never been fond of local law enforcement. Not much ever came of it, except I have a little PTSD from it, and we bought a shotgun to keep beside the front door for the next time. He didn't give a fuck. Last night I was laying in bed watching YouTube videos on my phone and falling asleep when I heard someone struggling with their lock next door. And then silence. And then a different adjacent condo sounds like they're having trouble too. And this doesn't sound right, so I silently got out of bed and grabbed my M&P 9. Note, my condo has an extremely open floor plan. All rooms open into the main room. Then, the noise was at my door. Fidgeting and then nothing. Then I saw the outline of a man in the twilight at my cracked open window. I could see his silhouette through the blinds, and I chambered around. He punched my screen in and tried to climb in. He had his head, one arm, and one leg through. Still, I didn't fire. I had dialed 911, and it took almost 30 seconds to get someone with all the auto-attendant menus asking if I spoke Spanish. All the while, I'm screaming, "Get the fuck out of my house, and someone call 911!" Dispatch finally answered, and I shouted my address. I was shouting, "Get the fuck out of my house! A home invasion in progress! I can't get out and will defend myself." Note, I live in Portland, Oregon. No duty to retreat. Here's my fuck up. I set the pistol down and grabbed my Mossberg 500 12-gauge loaded with double-aught buckshot. I racked the slide, and in the moment I'd hoped a distinctive sound would show that I wasn't fucking around. He says, "I don't give a fuck." Well, I switched back to the M&P because I practiced with it more and am more confident with it. Plus, 17 shots versus 5. But in stupidly switching weapons, I took my eyes off the target. I left myself vulnerable. Big fuck up, and it could have been a bad outcome. But the guy just stared at me and then left. That was it. About a minute later, 3 cruisers rolled up. The total time of incident from initially picking up my pistol to the cops showing up was under 4 minutes. I will also say that the Portland PD have always been very professional when I've dealt with them. I have no complaints. Once statements were done and they left to canvass the area, I grabbed my Shield 9 and drove to the girlfriend's house for the night. Night in my treehouse. Submitted by Tauntauns Are Tasty. I grew up an only child, and I fully admit I was pretty spoiled. My parents gave me a lot of things, and I don't think they were doing it to overcompensate. They just wanted me to have nice stuff. They were very protective of me, and didn't let me stay home by myself during the day until I was 11 or so. It wasn't until I was 13 that they let me stay home alone by myself at night. My dad had built me this awesome tree fort in a big tree at the edge of our yard. We had a really deep lot, and there was a pool, a big shed, a pool house, and then a big piece of grass between the house and the tree. It had a rope ladder to get up into it, a deck on the outside, and the main room was about 10 by 10. It had real windows and a door and even electricity. Inside were beanbag chairs, a low table, an entertainment console with a TV and cable, and a couple of small tables with lamps. I used to have friends stay overnight out there, and we would bring my PlayStation out and stay up super late playing games and just having fun. One summer night, my parents were going to a fancy dinner downtown for my dad's work, and they were thinking about staying overnight for the whole romantic deal. I was 14 by now, and Mom asked me if I would be okay staying home by myself, and I was pumped to be on my own, as it rarely happened. I asked if my friend Toby could stay over, and she wasn't okay with it at first, but my dad talked her into it, saying that Toby was a great kid and we'd be fine. Plus, Toby only lived a few blocks away, so if something happened, we could get his parents. Mom finally said okay. It was July and really hot out, so when Toby came over in the afternoon, we hung out in the pool with some other neighborhood friends until my parents had to leave, and everyone had to leave too, except for Toby. My dad gave me the standard "don't be stupid" directions, and handed me a $20 bill and said to get pizza or whatever for dinner. They finally left, and Toby looked at me and asked me what I was talking to Allison about. She had been in the pool earlier. Allison was a girl I liked and lived across the street. Amy is staying over at Allison's, and I told them to come over later, I said. He smiled and gave me $5. What if your parents see him here? I hadn't thought of that. My dad did have a camera system he could see on his phone, and if he checked, we'd be busted. After a minute, we both looked at each other and said, Treehouse, at the same time. We high-fived again. I ordered pizza, and we got to work on getting the treehouse ready. I took my new Xbox out there, filled a cooler with soda and chips and stuff, and we put it all on a plank that could be hoisted up to the deck. The pizza came, I grabbed our cordless phone and base for it, and Toby and I got everything up into the treehouse. We set up the room blasting music from the stereo up there, and we were psyched for a fun night of girls and games and who knows what else. The who knows what else did come. About 8:30, we heard the girls talking, and we went out onto the little deck and told them to come up. I remember Amy having a hard time with the rope ladder, and Toby going down to hold it steady for her. So, once everyone was inside, I pulled up the rope ladder and looked down at the 15 feet or so to the ground. It always seemed so high up, and I finally realized how high up it really was, if that makes sense, and how far back in the lot it was, and how you really couldn't see much from the house if you looked back towards it. We were all eating pizza and playing Xbox, and everyone was talking and laughing when the cordless phone rang. I shushed everyone and answered it. Hello? There was no one there, but I could hear sounds in the background, and then it hung up. I looked at the digital readout, but the number didn't come up, so I thought, who cares, and we just went back to doing what we were doing. A little while later, the phone rang again, and this time a voice said, Anybody home? And hung up. Toby asked what it was, and I told him, and he said it was probably just someone fucking around. Amy said she had to go to the bathroom, so Toby told her he'd help her down and take her to the pool house where she could go rather than go inside the house. The phone rang again. I answered it and was quiet in the background, but I faintly heard someone say, I'm telling you, nobody else is here. Let's go. They hung up, and I looked out the window to my house to see Toby and Amy going in the house and not the pool house. I was pissed. If my dad saw this, I'd be in deep shit. There was a bathroom right off the kitchen, so I hoped they'd just get in and get out. Allison asked me what was wrong, and I told her what I had heard, and she said it was probably just a prank. I agreed, and we sat there waiting after I turned off the TV, and I was just thinking things over. Deep down, I didn't really think it was a prank, but I didn't want to admit that. I took Allison by the hand and went out onto the deck and waited for Toby and Amy to come back. That's when I saw a light go on upstairs in my parents' room. A dark shape moved in front of the window, and Allison said, Uh-oh, I think your parents are home. I knew they weren't, and I knew that shape was not my dad. They're not coming home tonight, I said, and even if they were, they would have called me to let me know. Another light came on, and now I could see 2 different shapes moving around in the rooms upstairs, and then they both stopped. A few seconds later, Toby and Amy came out of the door and started walking towards us. The guys must have heard them flush the toilet. At the same time, a light in the hallway going down from the 2nd floor to the 1st came on, and through a little window on the landing in between, I saw 2 dark shapes fly by. Whoever was in the house was coming downstairs fast. Toby! I screamed. Run! I'm not kidding! Run! I could see their shapes in the light of the patio light, but they certainly couldn't see me. I brushed past Allison and turned off the lights and then went back outside. I heard Toby and Amy running towards the tree, and then they appeared at the rope ladder in the dark. Get up here, quick! I hissed, as Allison kept her eyes glued on the back of my house. Then she gasped, There's someone outside on your patio. Amy was again fumbling with the ladder, and Toby was literally ramming her in the butt, trying to get her up the thing while holding it steady. She finally got near the top. I grabbed her arm and yanked her roughly up, and she gave out a sharp cry. I looked to the back of the house to see if these men had heard anything. Toby was swinging wildly back and forth on the ladder, but finally got up, and we hauled it in and went inside the house. Toby was swinging wildly back and forth on the ladder, but he finally got up, we hauled it in, and then we went inside the treehouse. "Where is he?" I whispered to Allison. "I don't know. I think he went back inside." I grabbed the phone and dialed 911, but nothing happened. I tried again, and nothing happened. That's when I heard the breathing. Someone was already on the line in the house. "Toby," said a voice. "What are you trying to do, Toby?" I nearly shit my drawers. "Where are you, Toby? Make it easier and come on out." I hung up the phone. I had a cell phone, but it had been going wonky, and I didn't bring it up to the treehouse. And no one else had brought theirs either. Toby's was in my kitchen. "What are we going to do?" Allison whispered. Everyone was silent. We didn't know what to do. Then, more lights went on in the downstairs of my house. Through the windows, we could see two men moving from room to room, obviously looking for stuff to steal, and also looking for me. I tried the phone again, but the man was still on it, and I heard laughing in the background. "Come on, Toby. I know you can hear me. Come take a ride with us. I know someone who would love to have you live with them." I hung up again, shaking and not knowing what to do. Toby volunteered to go down and run to my neighbor's house, but we have a high fence all around the yard, and the only way to get out would be to run by the house. There was no way he wouldn't be seen by these guys if he tried that. The girls were scared, I was scared, and Toby kept insisting on going. I looked up and saw a guy in the patio again. He had a flashlight, and we all watched as he circled the pool and went to the pool house. I clicked the phone on again and kept my hand over it and listened. "Out by the pool, Toby?" said the voice. He went into the pool house and came out. "How about the garage and shed? Are you in there, Toby?" He checked both and came out after a minute. Then I heard another voice say, "Fuck it, we gotta go. Fuck the kid." "Oh well, Toby. Guess it's your lucky day. Watch your back, kiddo. We may just get you when you least expect it." He laughed and hung up the phone. I immediately called 911, and they said they were sending someone out right away. It was about 5 minutes later that 3 cop cars showed up, and I was still on the phone. They told us to stay in the treehouse until they came and got us. When they finally did, they called my parents, and they rushed home right away, but by that time, everyone else's parents were in my driveway looking for their kids. We got questioned a whole bunch, and police were in and out of the house constantly. My parents finally got home and were so worked up and upset, it was weird that they weren't mad. Even later, they weren't mad at me at all, and were happy we were all safe in the treehouse in the dark. I never did find out who the men were, how they knew I was supposed to be home alone, and there were no fingerprints in the house. Only a couple of things were taken, like my mom's jewelry and 2 of my dad's Rolex watches. When I turned 21, which was last year, my dad finally told me that the police thought the men were after me and not anything else, and they just took the stuff to make it look like a regular burglary. None of us got into trouble about that night, and we still talk about it when we get together. That is, Alice and me and Toby. Amy moved away, and I haven't seen her since my junior year of high school, and Toby and Allison are boyfriend and girlfriend now. I'll never know who those men were, but for years I was constantly looking over my shoulder everywhere I went, even into my college years. So, to you 2 creeps looking for a young boy home alone, let's never meet. Thanks for listening, gang. Please like, share, and subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment in the comments section below. I answer everyone. And also follow me on my social media outlets. The links to that are all in the description as well. Also, consider leaving me a tip at my Patreon page. You can donate as much or as little as you like, and all of it helps to keep this channel alive. Check out my paranormal radio show, The Edge of the Unknown, every Sunday night from 8 to 10 live Eastern, and you can find that at theedgeoftheunknown.com. Be excellent to each other, and I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.